Oh, hi, everybody. My name is Matt Storrs, and welcome to Mattsplaining. On today's episode, I have somebody on who is an expert in an area that I have been a big fan of since I was a child. Expert, please introduce yourself and tell us what you're an expert in.
Hi, my name is Jordan Yanko, and I'm an expert in accents and dialects.
Absolutely fantastic. Ever since I was a young child, I have been fascinated by accents and dialects. I have had the pleasure or displeasure of watching a number of movies where people had very distinctive accents at a age that was too young. And I think that's how you kind of pick up accents. It's like a defense mechanism to trauma. So, for instance, I saw Fargo when I was 10. And after that, that Minnesotan accent, oh, don't you know, all that sort of stuff picked up right away. And mostly to dissuade my dad's fear that exposing his 10-year-old son to people being put into a wood chipper would scar him for life. But I could do accents because of that. And then I saw Train Spotting and I picked up that Scottish accent very, very quickly. I also picked up a fear of needles that is lifelong. But I did learn something just this past week. I went to the doctor that helped me not faint when I got my blood drawn. I feel like that's progress. So now I have these multiple accents as well as the ability to not faint consistently at the doctor's office, which I think that's ultimately what accents and dialects are trying to get towards, is like helping convince people that you have these accents and these voices. They don't need to necessarily know the underlying traumas that have led you to compensate for by having these accents.
And hopefully not faint when you do them.
Exactly, because that's another thing that a lot of people don't know about with voices and accents is that the amount of energy that you have to expend to do the accent is much more so than what you would normally expend when you're normally talking, because you have to engage different muscles in your tongue and your mouth and your jaw. And that can lead to people really expending 2 times, 3 times in some instances, especially if you're doing more of like a Cockney accent, I think it is. That requires a lot of additional calorie expenditure to do. So you can really get tired very quickly.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and it's a big concern. And another thing with some accents, a lot of people that have TMJ or lockjaw or muscle issues with the jaw, by doing accents, what they can do is actually release the tension in their jaw. It's actually their body telling them that your natural speaking patterns, your natural speaking voice are not appropriate for how your musculature wants you to talk. So a lot of people say you've experienced a significant head trauma. You hear this story a lot where people come in and they have no memory of who they are and they wake up with a French accent. That's actually
Yeah,
that's
foreign
actually
accent syndrome. Yes.
exactly. So that's the body responding to that trauma by saying, hey, we're going to help heal the brain, heal the musculature of the body by giving you an accent that's going to make you feel more calm. And that's one thing about the French accent or Italian accent, some of those European accents, they just help the body repair itself. And that's one of the things, a lot of people will watch French movies when they're feeling sad and everything like that.
Oh,
And
wow. Yeah, I
part of
hadn't
the
heard that.
A lot of people will watch the French movies or will be predisposed to watching like a British movie or like have movies that are accents that are their comfort films, where the characters in those movies have the accents and those become their comfort films, because that's their brain saying, hey, if you get a head trauma, this is what you're most likely going to come out with, because we want to heal you. We want to comfort you. And it's amazing what the brain is capable of doing to help people, and amazing how far we can go to develop these accents, and like how naturally we hang out with somebody, you start picking up kind of the vocal patterns and accents and mentalities that these people have, and just how naturally, like I have a friend who is traveling internationally. He's been in multiple different countries over the last couple of years, and 6 months here, 3 months here, what have you. And each time he comes back, whenever I talk to him, he'll have picked up some aspect of these accents. And then when he finally came back to New York and I talked to him, he was this weird mishmash of like within sentences, like changing his accent and just based on the words that he had picked up. And it was absolutely fantastic. Initially, I thought he was messing with me, but like he couldn't stop. He was like, I don't know how familiar you are with Batman, but like,
Batman, yes, love Batman.
yeah, Clayface in
Yes,
Batman. Yeah, when Clayface is like messing up and like transforming and he can't control it, it was like that, but with words and less like
with
tragic.
words or with accents.
Well, with the words and accents.
Oh, got it.
Yeah. So within one sentence, there would be like a sentence of 7 words. There might be 3 accents in it, and
Wow.
yeah, it was wild. It was crazy. It was very fun, but it was hard to keep up with. Now, based on everything you've heard so far, about how much of that would you say was accurate?
I would say out of 5, if I were
Okay.
to rate you on a scale from 0 to 5 accent marks,
Okay.
I would give you a 2,
A two.
because you did say there were some wonderful nuggets in there, like it's amazing what the brain is capable of picking up accents. That's definitely accurate. The more you're in a country, the more you're in a city, you pick that up naturally. But you also have your own identity. So you have your own accent where you grew up, and then you can absolutely pick up things that are different from the tribe that you are used to. So there were
Okay.
some good nuggets in there. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. What what got you into accents or and like dialects? Like what kind of sparked that for you?
Oh my goodness. My parents just let me run. So I was an infant babbling and watching Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers like everyone else. But then my dad got me onto Sesame Street. And I guess it was because I could mimic all of the things that I was seeing around me. And then after that, my dad's Israeli, so he taught me Hebrew. I took 4 years of German and 3 years of French, and just languages were kind of all around me. And then I just noticed all these patterns, these sound patterns, and I was like, wow, this is so cool. And everybody has one. Everybody has an accent.
Mhm.
And even if you think you don't have an accent, that in itself is kind of an accent. But then I was just able to just talk to someone and in a sentence or two, just know, oh, I can see where you're from. And then I kind of put it in this categorical box. And then I learned more about it. And linguistics was kind of the last piece that I needed to, in order to explain what I'm hearing. But I've just been doing it for so long that I am so comfortable with accents. I'm so comfortable with all these patterns and kind of explaining how they work. And that's what dialect coaches do. You only have an hour to break it down and make somebody British or what have you.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think that that's absolutely fantastic. My background with what I said up front, like the that I in saying it, I actually realized like, huh, yeah, that is probably a traumatic response I had to those movies in picking up those accents. But like
The wood
for
chipper. Oh,
yeah, but what's funny is that like with that Scottish accent that I would do, there was a time period in my life where like it helped me be more confident, if that makes sense, because i
sure.
could i could do that Scottish accent. And I definitely, in hindsight, like I ran into somebody doing the Scottish accent some one time, and I said Edinburgh and I didn't say it correctly, and he's like, okay, yeah, you're definitely not Scottish, stop lying to everybody at this desert party. And I'm like, no, like this is the only way I can talk to people. And he's like, you need to go to therapy. It got so far advanced that eventually I had to change my voicemail on my phone because so many people
Wow.
knew me as Scottish. It was very bad. I was insecure, is you can gather from that. But have
No,
you,
well, I mean, there's two things I want to talk about. So first of all, if you're doing an accent, you're kind of outside of yourself, right? Like
right,
there's less pressure to mess up. It's not you that's messing up. It's now this Scottish character, right? So
right.
there's a kind of confidence there that comes from that. But also there's certain rules that we have to follow, and with the accent, and all together those rules sound amazing. But to someone that's from there, you'd be like, wait, you missed a rule. So that right
Right.
there takes you out of it. And
Hmm.
that's why that person from Edinburgh. And also, if I could even add a third thing, there's certain things that we hold on to. Like I know for me personally that Train Spotting was a huge game changer for me. And there's lines that I don't even remember the whole movie, but of course I remember, take the best orgasm you've ever had, multiply it by 1,000, and you still won't get the feeling of heroin, right? So
Right.
lines like that just stay with you. And certain lines in an accent, you just get so passionate about it, so excited about it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's shocking how much it kind of sticks in your brain. Cause with you saying that, I'm like, oh, well, are there any lines from the movie that really stick out in my brain? And I'm like, I don't know exactly. They're like kind of vague in my brain, but I know that if I
Yeah.
put it on right now, and like I would just immediately kind of sink
Quoting
into
it,
it.
just
Yeah.
quoting it. Exactly. For me, that's Pulp Fiction. Pulp Fiction is
Okay.
one of those movies I have to just watch all the way through. Or when it was on television, I can't possibly flip through without watching it all the way through. It just got so many quotables, and there's accents in there too, of course.
Absolutely.
But I'm dying to know, by the way, this fear of needles thing, because I too have a fear of needles, and if we could help at least one person not faint at needles, please.
Yeah, I mean the accent dialects episode is going to be medically profound for somebody. No, basically what they had me do is they brought in two nurses, so the person that was drawing my blood, the phlebotomist, and then somebody else to help out, and just in case I fell off the table.
Right.
They laid me back, but then one of them gave me a little alcohol wipe, one of those like screen cleaners or like hand cleaners or what have you,
Yes.
and like opened it part of the way so it was exposed, and then they had me clamp it in two of my fingers, so like the pointer finger and middle finger and then my thumb, so hold
Okay.
that really tightly in the hand that wasn't the opposite arm, and
Right.
then just put it under my nose and sniff it, and just keep, so anytime I was breathing, I was breathing in this alcohol, and
Right.
so because it cleared up my nostrils, it was much easier to get more oxygen in, and so then I was breathing harder because I was getting significantly more oxygen in. And that's the big thing when you get that fear of needles, like you start panicking and you stop breathing consistently. And
Yes.
I would imagine too, so yeah, it was amazing how effective it was. Like I still got lightheaded and everything like that, but I didn't actually faint. And I was like so appreciative to these people. To go back to the topic of the day, I would imagine that like breath is probably really, really important, and like maybe having to like change your breath or breathing patterns with accents. Is that accurate?
Yes, of course. Well, for any kind of speech, you need your good breath support.
Okay.
But certain accents are breathier than others, and then you'll run out. So you want to always make sure that you have enough breath, even when you're doing a Marilyn Monroe impression, to have enough to get your utterance out, to get your phrase out before running out of breath. And also, it's funny that you mentioned the thing with feeling lightheaded. I used to do this thing in school. I remember in high school, I would challenge myself, and my friends were all in on it, where I would try to do an accent for as long as possible. And
Hmm.
back then, we did like a lot of Yoda, a lot of Star Wars stuff. And I would do Yoda, and Yoda has his own set of hurdles that come along with it, because you have to invert the direct object,
Right.
and you have to have this creaky kind of voice like this you must have, right? So there's a lot of things that are
Mm.
going on. But if you do that for enough time and you're not getting enough air, you will pass out. And I
Right.
did. And that was proof that you do need enough air to sustain life, but also for accents.
Absolutely. You've heard the story about when Frank Oz was doing all of the Yoda voices when they were first recording, right?
No,
Oh yeah,
please.
he passed out like every couple
Oh,
hours. They
I
just,
believe it.
yeah,
I believe
he
it.
it was a big problem. Like they didn't get adequate insurance at first, and
Oh gosh.
they freaked out. They're like, "Oh no, we're gonna kill Frank Oz," but luckily they didn't.
You kill two birds. You kill the Grover and the Yoda in
Y-
one.
oh yeah,
Oh,
is there any particular accent or any particular dialect that like has evaded you or that like you find particularly difficult?
I would say, well, I got a lot of questions like, what's the hardest accent? So I think the hardest accent coming from English would be the thing that's furthest from English. So if you think about like the thing furthest from English sounds, and you can have the fakies like your Klingons and your Elven tongues, but in the real world, I would say like Vietnamese is pretty
Okay.
hard because you've got a
Okay.
lot of glottals and you've got a lot of pops. So it's different sounds. It's a different phonology than English. So
Right.
coming from, and so that's why the easiest one would be the ones that sound like English, so like British, right?
Right.
I would say the easiest accent for an American to learn would probably be a British accent, and the easiest accent for a Brit to learn would probably be a Southern accent, because think about how we came here, right? How we spread out across the United States. If you watch Knives Out, that's a hilarious version of Daniel Craig doing a almost a foghorn leghorn. What is this? CSI KFC? That's my favorite line.
It's a great line. I love that. And I love how like just in America there's all these different accents and how everything is kind of developed as time has gone on. It's just really beautiful because it's my understanding that our like Boston, New York accent or like the British accent today, the British accents today
Yeah.
were not what they were like back in like colonial times. Like
Correct.
yeah, that I've always found that fascinating. Do you know any more about that?
Yeah, it's basically colonization, right? You can look it up and see, like, basically it changed. There was a whole, I mean, that's where the whole transatlantic thing came from, right? So, like,
Hmm.
if you think about the big motion pictures, right? So, like,
Right.
the
You
big motion
gotta you
picture,
gotta get in there. Right.
exactly. But you just dropped an R, so that's British. But you also, if you look at Katharine Hepburn and those guys, they'll say their R every second time. So it's like they're kind of splitting the difference. And
Okay.
that's exactly what they wanted the transatlantic accent to be, right? It's like they wanted to attract the British audiences, but they also wanted to attract the American audiences. So where you going, Johnny? Right? So where are you going? Drop the R.
Hmm.
Johnny, right? A short Y in Johnny. And all of that just evolved. And accents just when we evolve our accent, we keep what we want to keep and we lose what we want to lose. If you have something that you get made fun of for, you're gonna fix it, right? But if no
Right.
one's saying anything, keep it. Who cares, right? As long as the message gets across, that's all we want.
Absolutely. Jordan, this has been so insightful. I have absolutely adored being able to talk to you. If people wanted to learn more about you or more about accents and dialects, where would you recommend that they go?
Well, jordanyanko.com. So that's JordanYanco.com.
Hmm.
I love accents in any form. So I do classes, I do one-on-ones, I do workshops, and I just love having the ability to break it down, right? Because sometimes they can be intimidating. Sometimes you need a role in half an hour and I'll do it. But other times, if you have the luxury of sitting around and playing with an accent, really letting the flavors get into your body and just like embodying that accent, that's where you're going to have the best results. Oh, hashtag. So I have my @accent on Jordan. That's my Twitter and
Hmm.
Instagram. But otherwise, jordanyanko.com. Reach out and we'll play. We'll play with some accents.
Excellent. Jordan, thank you so much. I have learned so much and I really appreciate it.
Would you like to know something that I heard about the Matt Storrs accent?
Oh, yeah, I would love that.
Yeah, so there's one sound in particular. There's one vowel in particular that Matt Storrs uniquely does. So I'm going to say a word and you say the word. I'm going to spell it out, right? So
Okay.
AND, go.
And.
Oh, wonderful. So I say that a little differently than you do.
Hmm.
So I would say and. But the way you say it, you kind of have a raising to E. So you kind of like have an and, and. And that is definitely a Southwest thing.
Okay. Yeah, I wonder if it's because my thing is I will say at least how I perceive it is that I use and in place of a pause often.
Right. Like I'm
Yeah,
talking specifically about the filler, like when you
right.
say and. So it's not
And
necessarily an like that's a filler, but
right,
this is like you have two things to say and you're linking them together. That kind of and, right? So you're saying
right.
like I did this and I got a sandwich, right? So you might say I did this and I got a sandwich.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's yeah, to I love it. Yeah, I definitely listening back to the episodes, I have definitely noticed it more and more. So it's very fun to hear it from another person.
Well, only someone as neurotic as myself who notices every single sound and like, oh, well, how can we work with that? How can we play? How can we? So if I were to coach somebody on a Matt Storrs idiolect, right, that's
Hmm.
unique to Matt Storrs, that is one of the things I would have to say. It's like, make sure that when you're doing your connecting filler sound, you do and.
Jordan, this has been so wonderful. And I just really feel that people are going to learn a lot today. And I can't wait for the Matt Storrs accent to permeate into society.
Yes, the Maccent.
The Matt
Maccent? That doesn't really work.
Matt
We'll
sent
think of
the Storrs. What's a S word that could work?
speech,
The Storrs
Storrs.
speech.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Storrs
Storrs
speech.
speech. Yeah, Storrs speech. There we go. Fantastic. I am Matt Storrs, and this has been Mattsplaining.